Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Mindful Public Safety Hour. I'm Troy Torrance, Health Management Specialist for the Indiana State Police Training Division, your co-host for this evening. The Center for Mindfulness and Public Safety hosts these weekly online gatherings, and this is our 254th meeting. For our opening practice tonight, I welcome Brent Anderson, who is our featured presenter. He will be formally introduced in a few minutes. Brent?
Thank you, Troy. I welcome you all, and I'm excited about the time we're going to spend together. I understand they have you guys till 10:30. Is that right? Yeah, okay. Just kidding, just kidding. So I'm going to make the best of the time that we have together. And to get us into the moment, to get us focused and centered, would it be okay to do some soft belly breathing? Anybody done any soft belly breathing before? Yeah. So let's do that for 90 seconds. And then we're going to talk about what happens in the brain and the body and talk about the impact that being regulated can have for us. Okay, so let's begin. Put your feet firmly on the ground, feeling grounded, feeling your bottom on the cushion in the chair and your back against the seat. You can close your eyes, soften your gaze, place your arms in your lap or at your side, whatever's comfortable. We're going to begin to breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. We're going to do it for about 2 minutes. So let's begin. Take a deep breath in through the nose. And a slow release, exhaling through the mouth. Deep breath in. And a slow release. When we do this, we activate the vagus nerve. Vagus in Latin means wander. It wanders up through our gut, up through our chest, up to the amygdala. And it engages, it activates the parasympathetic function of the autonomic nervous system, the rest and digest, the peace function. So take a breath, deep breath in. And a slow release. Take a couple more. Deliberately taking in more oxygen on the inhale. And when we do this, we engage the parasympathetic function and we turn off the sympathetic, the gas pedal. You may have thoughts, let them in. Let them go and focus back in on the breath. You may hear sounds. Let them in, let them go, and focus back in on the breath. You may hear quiet. That's okay. Receive it all and focus back in on the breath. And notice where you're wearing tension today. It's late in the day. Tension shows up in your body. I can feel it in the middle of my back, just a little in my forehead. And on the exhale, let go. Focus on that tension and let it go. Let's just take a couple more. Take a couple more on your own, and when you're ready, and only when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And I'll turn it back over.
Our program this evening is entitled Conversations Around ACEs, Trauma, and Mind-Body Medicine Skills That Help. There will be opportunities for your interaction as time is planned for Q&A. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce Brent Anderson. He's based in Central Indiana and is a consultant, trainer, and transformation specialist. He is a certified brief action planning, motivational interviewing trainer, and is an adverse childhood experiences master trainer. Additionally, he is certified in mind-body medicine and a faculty member with the Center for Mind-Body Medicine. Brent has more than 20 years of experience working with providers, including hospitals, EMTs, federally qualified healthcare centers, and other organizations seeking to improve outcomes within their communities. He is the founder of Breathe Right LLC. Brent, welcome.
Thank you, Robert. I have spent the last decade or more working with organizations doing, just be difficult, why don't you? Doing work, transformation work with FQHCs, clinics, hospitals, organizations all across the state of Indiana. And along the way, I was introduced to the adverse childhood experience research. And it began to change my opinion and my focus, and it changed my career. And on top of that, it was probably 2017, I met Dr. Anda at Pike here in Indianapolis. He came and presented, and I thought, wow, I found something that I really like. And since then, I've become a sponge. I've become a trauma sponge. So included is this work that I'm going to share with you, which centers around the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, which formerly was the National Council for Behavioral Health. A lot of the work that I do, I use this. This is a really good tool that I've used to help organizations step by step become trauma informed, learning all of the stuff that helps you do a better job of creating these environments that are safe and supportive. And yeah, so let's just start there. I wanted to give them their credit. You did soft belly breathing. Soft belly breathing is a powerful tool. It's one of the tools the Center for Mind-Body Medicine utilizes to help. And I'm going to share with you in a bit a little bit more about what it does. So I encourage you, I'm a faculty member there. I'm a faculty member with the Center for Collaboration, Motivation, Innovation out of Canada. And that's the work that I love. I finally decided to just do my own thing. So 2025 is me fully doing this. I'm actually supporting my former Indiana Department of Health teams, in fact, doing mind-body medicine small group work with fatality review team there, and done 3 cohorts of 10 people and just doing the work. And it's remarkable because it helps. And we have the data around how it helps. We do a preconceived stress scale before and after, and the data reflects it helps. But I'm just encouraging you guys to take a look at the website, and I would love to talk more about getting you guys involved in small group work, mind-body medicine work that helps. Let's continue. So I want to begin by saying, hopefully you guys can see that. What Happened to You? Book by Dr. Bruce Perry. If you haven't read it, I encourage you to read it. He and Oprah wrote this book. And it really is about him talking about the neuroscience of it all, trauma, the stories, and it's Oprah telling her story about trauma. Once again, it's what happened to you. Conversations on trauma and resilience and healing. And so in 2021, no, 2019, I started to go after Dr. Perry to be our content expert here in India. And so in 2021, we secured him and we began using him to do the content expertise around this work. And I want to share with you to begin with, a big pearl to take home with you tonight is Dr. Perry's upside down triangle. And when we do soft belly breathing, what happens is the brain opens up, and his diagram explains what it does. It begins to regulate you. So there is this on the left, this structure, and on the right are the functions that are associated with those structures. And what happens is brainstem, cerebellum, diencephalon, limbic region, cortex region, these are core regulatory networks in the middle. And these are the things that are connected with those areas. Everything from body temperature, heart rate, blood pressure, sleep, appetite, emotional reactivity, everything up to abstract thought, concrete thought. So when you're relaxed and you're meditated, when you get in that state, you begin to regulate and your brain opens up, which is what you need, right? If you're in stressful situations or you're communicating with folks, you want to be in the upside down triangle state to help you truly access everything. Because what happens is the regulation starts down here. And when you are regulated as we do with soft belly breathing, the brain begins to open up and these core regulatory networks begin to kick in and give you access to every other part of the brain. Okay, what happens on the opposite side? It's the opposite. I remember my dad saying to me at certain points, "Boy, I don't think you listened to a word I said to you." And I'm like, "Nope." Because it was like my brain was shutting down because he would yell sometimes or it was just stressful. So when you're stressed, you do this thing. And so we're going to talk about other things that happen inside the body that are noticeable and other things that are not so noticeable. But the more that we can regulate ourselves, and I'm going to encourage you guys, a note for you is to have a look at on YouTube, the Neurosequential Network, Dr. Perry's content, and it's all free. You can get all of it on the Neurosequential Network. This and so many other resources. He's brilliant and just does a really good job of making the complex simple. So the simple thing to take home here is that we can self-regulate. I have learned since being connected to him in this work how to regulate my blood pressure. Yeah. In 2021, I think it was, my doctor wanted to increase my blood pressure meds. And I thought, no, I went through this training. Please give me some time. 6 months later, and since then, they lowered the standards for blood pressure from 140/90 down to 120/80. And my doctor wanted to increase the drugs to a combination to try to get there. And I'm like, let me do this thing that I think I can do. Long story short, I now know how to regulate myself, and my blood pressure is 120/80 consistently. And I do know now that I was stressed out going to the doctor because I could feel it. And so now I know as I'm going and my body's trying to do this thing, I'm regulating it through breath work. And so when they come to take my blood pressure, I'm calm, I'm relaxed, and I'm regulated. Powerful tool. And that tool, if we can teach that to ourselves and teach it to others, creates environments where we can communicate better, we connect better, and all these things that you see on the right are engaged. Just want to spend a little time there because when we are regulated, we can connect and be more compassionate. This is actually pets of someone that I work with. And my mind is saying, why is the dog chasing the bird? I mean, but this thing can happen where you can be in this very relaxed, calm, regulated state where these two they're communicating. Yeah, regulation helps you do that. So let's talk about the ACEs research, Adverse Childhood Experience Research. It's a study that was done in the late 90s, 17,000 participants. And it confirmed that there's this thing that we are now seeing, which evidence now says that the adversity in childhood early in life increases physical, mental, behavioral problems later in life. I was trained by Dr. Robert Anda, and there are opportunities. I mentioned this before we began. There are opportunities if you're interested in becoming an ACEs master trainer. There are opportunities through the Indiana ACEs Coalition to become a master trainer, and I encourage you. The research is stunning and staggering. I'm going to share some of it with you. That I could spend a whole day doing ACEs training with you guys. I took some of the pearls to hopefully get your interest up so that you might want to spend some time learning more about ACEs. So as far as the demographics for the study, there were 337 patients. 54% were female, 46 were male, 74.8% were white, 4.5% Black, 7.2% Asian Pacific Islander, 2.3% other, 11.2% Hispanic, and just a couple of more, just to give you an idea of who was in this study. And this is Kaiser. This is some of the best insurance in the world that these folks have. And let's just see. Ages, education, most of the 39.3% college graduate or higher. So it just tells you, and then you just kind of look at this population of folks and, what happened. And they were really looking to see, the hypothesis is what is this impact? And they took 10 core childhood adversities, which I'll show you in a second. Just wanted to see what happened. And what they learned is that all of that stuff, it's stored in our memories, it's stored in our bodies, it's stored in our DNA. It carries with us. So we now know, this is what we call the oil slick slide, attributable risks. So all of these things on the screen are attributed to childhood adversity. So if you look at suicide, 67% of suicides are attributed to ACEs. 61% disturbed days work activity. 61.4% of them are attributed to adverse childhood experiences. Anxiety, marijuana use, incarceration, diseases, all of it, you can tie it directly back to. We now have research that says it is attributed to adverse childhood experiences. And I'll just say, I'm going to give you one of the huge take homes from the research is we now know that this stuff is predictable. The ACE interface theory helps us understand that if it's predictable, we can then begin to prevent it. So one way to look at this slide is to say, if we can prevent adverse childhood experiences, we can prevent 67% of the suicides. If we can prevent adverse childhood experiences, we can prevent 32.5% alcohol binge drinking. So that's another way to interpret the data, that this is a way from a prevention standpoint for us to understand that if we start to impact adverse childhood experiences, we can directly impact all of this stuff that we're seeing in our communities. And we now know, I'm going to make this personal, right? So we now know that it causes early death. If you score a 6 or higher on the 10 questions, it's associated with 20 years of life lost. I am doing this work because of my own traumas. I lost my first wife in 2020 to breast cancer. She was 56. My mother passed at age 60. And trauma's personal for you as well. I'll ask you, look around you. What impact is it having on your direct family, right? And so a lot of the stuff that you're seeing in your personal life and in the communities, a lot of the stuff, early childhood death, early death, early adversity is the cause of this thing that's shutting off, and it's causing us to really impact the trajectory of our life course. So here are the 10 questions centered around child physical abuse, child sexual abuse, child emotional abuse, physical neglect, mentally ill, depressed, or suicide person in the home, drug addicted or alcoholic family member, witnessing domestic violence against the mother, loss of parent to death or abandonment, including abandonment by divorce, incarceration of a family member. And I always ask when I do these trainings, if there's anyone who has not been affected by childhood adversity, trauma, please raise your hand or unmute. I would love to talk to you, because the reality is it touches all of us. I don't know many, if any, who are immune to the impact of these core 10 that they looked at. And I know many folks say, well, this ain't really a broad range of traumas. There's many more worse than this. Yeah, but this is just the core 10 with the initial research, and the data is staggering. So 6 of 100 people who have no ACE scores will smoke. 11 of 100 with an ACE score of 3 will smoke. 17 out of 100 with an ACE score of 7 will smoke. 17 of 100 with an ACE score of 7 ACEs will smoke. So there's a dose-response relationship. So the more ACEs, the higher the adverse consequences from it. The more disease that we see. Yeah, and I don't want to make this a lecture, so anybody have any questions, please feel free to, I think they're okay to speak up or raise a hand, right? So ACE is an alcohol use disorder. As the ACEs go up, so does the percent of alcoholism go up. So we now know that all these things, and this isn't the complete list, are directly attributed to adverse childhood events. Alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use, right? Diabetes, depression, anxiety, mental illness, suicide attempts, obesity, intimate partner violence, perpetration and victimization. Yeah, all this stuff is directly tied to what's happened in our lives. Okay. I am going to share a video now. I'm going to watch about 10 minutes of this. This is Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris. She is out of California. Um, yeah, they do things differently there, but I'm going to show the first 10 minutes of this because it really is the science and the impact of it. And we don't advise everyone go out and do their ACE scores. The Indiana ACE Coalition does not advise that. I want to be clear about that. We do advise using sensitive inquiry and other techniques that are effective and then getting the support that's needed, but certainly don't want to make this something that we do for everyone. But I just want to share this. It's a really good foundation for understanding ACEs.
In the mid-90s, the CDC and Kaiser Permanente discovered an exposure that dramatically increased the risk for 7 out of 10 of the leading causes of death in the United States. In high doses, it affects brain development, the immune system, hormonal systems, and even the way our DNA is read and transcribed. Folks who are exposed in very high doses have triple the lifetime risk of heart disease and lung cancer and a 20-year difference in life expectancy. And yet doctors today are not trained in routine screening or treatment. Now, the exposure I'm talking about is not a pesticide or a packaging chemical. It's childhood trauma. Okay. What kind of trauma am I talking about here? I'm not talking about failing a test or losing a basketball game. I am talking about threats that are so severe or pervasive that they literally get under our skin and change our physiology. Things like abuse or neglect, or growing up with a parent who struggles with mental illness or substance dependence. Now, for a long time, I viewed these things in the way I was trained to view them. Either as a social problem, refer to social services, or as a mental health problem, refer to mental health services. And then something happened to make me rethink my entire approach. When I finished my residency, I wanted to go someplace where I felt really needed, someplace where I could make a difference. So I came to work for California Pacific Medical Center, one of the best private hospitals in Northern California, and together we opened a clinic in Bayview Hunters Point, one of the poorest, most underserved neighborhoods in San Francisco. Now, prior to that point, there had been only one pediatrician in all of Bayview to serve more than 10,000 children. So we hung a shingle and we were able to provide top quality care regardless of ability to pay. It was so cool. We targeted the typical health disparities: access to care, immunization rates, asthma hospitalization rates, and we hit all of our numbers. We felt very proud of ourselves. But then I started noticing a disturbing trend. A lot of kids were being referred to me for ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. But when I actually did a thorough history and physical, what I found was that for most of my patients, I couldn't make a diagnosis of ADHD. Most of the kids I was seeing had experienced such severe trauma that it felt like something else was going on. Somehow, I was missing something important. Now, before I did my residency, I did a master's degree in public health. One of the things that they teach you in public health school is that if you're a doctor and you see 100 kids that all drink from the same well, and 98 of them develop diarrhea, you can go ahead and write that prescription for dose after dose after dose of antibiotics, or you can walk over and say, what the hell is in this well? So I began reading everything that I could get my hands on about how exposure to adversity affects the developing brains and bodies of children. And then one day, my colleague walked into my office and he said, "Dr. Burke, have you seen this?" In his hand was a copy of a research study called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. That day changed my clinical practice and ultimately my career. The Adverse Childhood Experiences Study is something that everybody needs to know about. It was done by Dr. Vince Felitti at Kaiser and Dr. Bob Onda at the CDC, and together they asked 17,500 adults about their history of exposure to what they called adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. Those include physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, physical or emotional neglect, parental mental illness, substance dependence, incarceration, parental separation or divorce, or domestic violence. For every yes, you would get a point on your ACE score. And then what they did was they correlated these ACE scores against health outcomes. What they found was striking. Two things. Number one, ACEs are incredibly common. 67% of the population had at least one ACE, and 12.6%, 1 in 8, had 4 or more ACEs. The second thing that they found was that there was a dose-response relationship between ACEs and health outcomes. The higher your ACE score, the worse your health outcomes. For a person with an ACE score of 4 or more, their relative risk of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease was 2.5 times that of someone with an ACE score of 0. For hepatitis, it was also 2.5 times. For depression, it was 4.5 times. For suicidality, it was 12 times. A person with an ACE score of 7 or more had triple the lifetime risk of lung cancer and 3.5 times the risk of ischemic heart disease, the #1 killer in the United States of America. Well, of course, this makes sense. You know, some people looked at this data and they said, come on, you have a rough childhood, you're more likely to drink and smoke and do all these things that are going to ruin your health. This isn't science. This is just bad behavior. It turns out this is exactly where the science comes in. We now understand better than we ever have before how exposure to early adversity affects the developing brains and bodies of children. It affects areas like the nucleus accumbens, the pleasure and reward center of the brain that is implicated in substance dependence. It inhibits the prefrontal cortex, which is necessary for impulse control and executive function, a critical area for learning. And on MRI scans, we see measurable differences in the amygdala, the brain's fear response center. So there are real neurologic reasons why folks exposed to high doses of adversity are more likely to engage in high-risk behavior. And that's important to know. But it turns out that even if you don't engage in any high-risk behavior, you're still more likely to develop heart disease or cancer. The reason for this has to do with the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the brain's and body's stress response system that governs our fight or flight response. How does it work? Well, imagine you're walking in the forest and you see a bear. Immediately, your hypothalamus sends a signal to your pituitary, which sends a signal to your adrenal gland that says, release stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol. And so your heart starts to pound, your pupils dilate, your airways open up, and you are ready to either fight that bear or run from the bear. And that is wonderful if you're in a forest and there's a bear. But the problem is what happens when the bear comes home every night. And this system is activated over and over and over again. And it goes from being adaptive or life-saving to maladaptive or health damaging. Children are especially sensitive to this repeated stress activation because their brains and bodies are just developing. High doses of adversity not only affect brain structure and function, they affect the developing immune system.
Stop that there for the sake of time. Yeah, but that's a TED Talk, and there's more to it. And I'm looking forward to having a discussion towards the end of this too, if we can. But what's sitting in the room when trauma's in the room, right? So anything resonating here? So I know what resonates with me. Please put it in the chat so I know you guys are still with me. Anything that's resonating on here that you're seeing or that makes sense. Because I can tell you the one that stands out the most to me is hyperarousal. Anybody seeing any hyperarousal in the folks that they serve or in their communities or in their families, at work? Yeah, and a lot of it is this dysregulation thing that's taking place. They're not they're stressed. People are stressed. Yeah. Can you guys can still see my screen, right? It just did something weird. Okay. Yeah, so I don't know what resonates with you. I don't know if anyone I see the chat, let's see. Difficulty with relationships, difficulty with sleep, traumatic grief. Yeah, a lot of sleep problems, right? My wife struggles with it. And my wife, I'll wait till the next slide to bring up this other thing that I'm experiencing. But yeah, so when you're helping people or working with people, providing services, the elephant in the room is trauma. And they don't say, hey, I'm traumatized. They just, no, but this is what it presents itself in all of these ways. And I'll ask you to think about, put that lens on yourself and look inward. And how are you showing up? Are you showing up with any of these? I mean, we're human, right? And we know we got aces. We just talked about that, right? So the more that we can regulate ourselves to be in the state where we can truly connect, like the bird and the dog scene at the beginning, right? We can do that. We can create those environments if we're regulated. But if we're stressed, showing up trying to help stress people, it's not a good combination. But quite frankly, we all have so much pulling at us. And as you try to be in these relaxed states, I don't know if you can see that. Let me enlarge the screen. But here's what happens. So you have the fight or flight response or freeze response, and there's a new one, the fawn response. So you familiar with the fawn response? Yeah, I see the yes, the nodding of the heads, pleasing the threat to handle the threat, right? So yeah, here on the left, noticeable effects, hidden effects, and I'll just highlight a couple on the left. The one that resonates with me is my rapid breathing, right? Heart rate speeds up, chest palpitations. Yeah, on the right side, blood pressure rises, adrenaline release for fight or flight. And let's sit with cortisol for a second. Anybody know the ill effects of cortisol? Yeah. It's a wonderful thing. It helps, it's one of those stress hormones that helps us in fight or flight for us to do what we need to do to protect ourselves, right? But when it's stuck in the on position, it's toxic. It causes that central obesity, the weight gain, and just having it in the on position because we're doing this thing all day long, it doesn't shut off. We do it at work and we go home as our kids, our families, it's community, and that's what's happening. That's what's taking years off of our lives. And so the more that we can begin to regulate ourselves, regulate the things that are going on, the more that we can deactivate the stress response system, the more that we can create this calm, more natural state for us to be in. This thing that we're doing is not a good thing, right? So the more that we can, this is the mindfulness piece, this is the meditation piece, the more that we can create this relaxed, peaceful, meditative state, the more we can shut off cortisol production, we can shut off the noticeable and hidden effects that are taking place. And I know I don't have much time left, so this is a conversation about emptying your cup. And I always talk about the analogy, anybody coffee drinkers or tea drinkers, You're pouring that first cup in the morning, it starts to overflow, and it'd be like you're watching it and you know it's overflowing, but you just keep pouring into it. Many of us do that every day. We just keep pouring in, and our cups are full, and we know it. We know we're stressed. So mind-body medicine, what works is figuring out what helps you empty your cup. When you begin to empty that cup, you can pour back into it, right? But when it's full and it's overflowing, that's the analogy that I hope is coming to mind, because we can do things. The breath work helps. Movement helps. There are a long list of evidence-based skills that we practice. Journaling, writing helps. Imagery helps. Mindful eating helps. Mindful walking helps. There's a long list of things that we can do. And this is data around ACEs. This is a 10th grade class that says that 13 out of every 30 students in the classroom will have toxic stress from 3 or more adverse childhood experiences. It's the #1 chronic health epidemic according to Doctors Anda and Brown. And the next thing I want to do, make sure I show you guys this. This book is called The Transformation. This book is one of the things that changed my life, is getting this work and reading this book, translating all of this stuff that I just shared with you about, what's going on in the brain and the body, or our human physiology is connected. And people go to medical school are taught that they're separate. I hear this from a lot of physicians that are going on faculty or have gone through this. I've just had 2 in a small group that I did, and this is new. This is different. This is a different way of doing things. It's more holistic, right? And it's having a greater impact. So one more good share for you is in the realm of hungry ghosts, Gabor Mate. Yeah. And Gabor Mate says that, when trauma happens, it's a psychological wound. And we tend to not, it hurts. We don't want to go there. So what we do is we just push it down, push it down. Another mentor of mine says, we put it in a backpack and just keep going. I'll do it later. I don't have time to do it. It's too painful to even address it. So I'm just going to keep going and keep going. And then at some point, that bag gets too heavy. And then that's where we have substance abuse, mental health, all the things that you see in the community going, you go, what is going on? It's just this thing. It's just piled up and in, and we're not really taught ways to help us move through emotions, and to accept emotions as a friend is something that I have learned doing this work, to welcome them. Sometimes they're big. Sometimes they come in different ways, and the way that you move through them is the thing that helps you find health and well-being and truly experience life to the fullest. It's when they get stuck that we have our problems. And this is just a reflection, right? If you knew how excruciatingly uncomfortable it is to live in my own skin, you would understand why I don't want to be present in my body and in this world. So trauma is a risk factor for substance abuse, and substance abuse is a risk factor for trauma. Early emotional loss is a template for all addictions, something that craving a temporary relief or long-term negative consequences, something that is associated with that. Self-medicate to soothe their emotional pain, but more than that, their brain development was sabotaged by traumatic experiences. And I like this because, this reminds me that there's so much, this is advertising, marketing, ideas, lights, content. We're trying to do so much, and you just get on your phone and you try to look up something, and there's so many things trying to get at you to get your time, get your money. The brain it's being sabotaged in so many ways. And that early adversity really was the beginning of when we got sabotaged. Dr. Bruce Perry says the first 2 months are the most important in the development of a child's brain. The first 2 months. As the architecture begins to build, those first 2 months are very, very important. I know that now, right? But I remember using Barney back in the day, right? I was doing my best to get some free time, but I wish I could go back and make that. But that's the positive in this. We can go back and spend as much time as we can. We can use this and help other folks spend as much time, especially in the early. So I have CEOs who are like, how can I help give my workers, my staff, the best 2 months? Important. And then this thing that we do, this labeling and shaming folks, right? Shame is an intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unfortunate, unworthy of love and belonging. Something we've experienced, done, or failed to do makes us unworthy of connection. A Brene Brown quote, right? And we tend to shame folks who are struggling. So a lot of this work around being trauma informed, a lot of this work around mind body medicine work is treating people and showing compassion and creating safe spaces where folks can sit. We do small group work, and the small groups are groups of 6 to 10 people that meet for 2 hours once a week for 6 to 8 weeks. And in that time, we create this space where folks get a chance to work on what's coming up, working on themselves, and teaching them how to use these skills to begin to receive and be self-aware. So it's self-awareness, it's self-care, and it's mutual care. That's really the foundation of the work. And when you do it in groups, you become more self-aware. And self-care, I really make it brain care, because sometimes when I say self-care, they say, Brent, you're stressing me out even talking about stress care, because I don't know how to do it. I don't have time to do it. Organization doesn't give me time. So I'm like, okay, how about just giving your brain a break, right? So self-care, brain care, and then mutual care, where you care for each other better when you sit in small groups and become in this supported space. And then when you go through it, the team, when they come out, there's this thing called co-regulation that happens. They begin to give themselves grace and have more grace for the other folks on the team that are in the circle. And then become not just regulated individually, this co-regulation takes place when they go through it together, which is powerful. And I've seen it time and time again. It's a wonderful part of this mind body medicine work. And I think my time is about up. So an addict needs shame, like a man dying of thirst needs salt water. Things that we can do to help: peer recovery coaching, medications, CHWs, people, human connection. Dr. Perry says the human connection is the thing that is the superpower. So all this stuff we've gone through, when we begin to connect with people and communities and each other better, human connection can be the thing that heals us. And these are just next steps for how you do this. And I support teams in creating organizations that are trauma informed with these steps. These are the National Council for Mental Wellbeing steps. And I'll just end with this. The expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and loss daily and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as expecting to be able to walk through water without getting wet. So secondary vicarious trauma is real. We have our own traumas, and then we're helping other people take on some of theirs as we do that. And you have to be aware that it's having an impact on you. And so I'll just end by saying the mind body medicine work is work that helps, and it's work that helps. And it teaches internally things that you can tap into in the moment to help you with stress and trauma. And then you get together in groups and skills workshops to practice them. I think my time is up, so I'll stop there.
Certainly, we wanted to allow time for Q&A and responses to this information, a lot of insight, a lot of knowledge, just the kind of aha moments that that's why, or remembering issues with clients, issues with peers in the work, bringing up family issues and history. I mean, it becomes a pretty powerful experience just sort of soaking up the information. So I think actually having some Q&A discussions, opportunities for people to unmute or place in the chat anything that they'd like to say at this point. Any questions you have for Brent?
I see Gary's hands up. Yes, Gary.
In the ACEs studies, do they work with, and do you work with prenatal trauma?
I don't think this research included that, but that would be and I don't quote me on that, but I think I don't know that we went down that low. I will do my homework and check with the ACEs Coalition folks they do it every day to get you a definitive answer on that.
Thank you. And thank you for your presentation. It was great.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate your feedback. Yeah, the ACEs presentation was truly um, transformational for mental health, not just a number anymore. Thank you for that. And I see, is that Steph?
Hi, Brent.
Hi,
Thank you
Steph.
for that wonderful presentation. I'm joining from Hamilton, which is just outside Toronto in Canada. I have a question about the cortisol regulation. So you mentioned strategies like deep breathing, mindfulness practice. Is there anything else that you're aware of that helps with cortisol regulation, like in terms of supplements or vitamins or nutrition, um, or conversations to have with a doctor, or is it better to talk to a naturopath about that? Sorry, I have so many questions. But yeah, any suggestions about cortisol regulation and high blood pressure? I'm really curious what it was you did. I am not even 40, and I was diagnosed with hypertension last year, which was such a devastating, yeah, it was very
Yeah.
devastating. And yeah, so thank you.
Steph, I am not clinical, but I am connected to some of the brightest people in the world that I certainly could pose that question to. I just have tuned into the stress response and the activation and being able to shut it down, to shut down cortisol production. But I will see if I can find you a better answer than anything that I could provide you on the call tonight. Great question. Anything else?
Brent, I just want to say great job. A lot of great information. I also like the book recommendations, things to add to my list of reading or audiobooks for sure. So definitely some
I got
great information.
one more for you, Troy. The myth of normal, right? This is another good one because we all are chasing this thing, and it's a myth.
Yep.
People dressed up, we go to work, we have this mask on, we think that normal is this thing, and we think ourselves are being abnormal because we're not like some of the other. It's just a myth. I see Sandy has her hand up. Yes, Sandy.
Thank you. Thanks, Brent, for your presentation. Just wanted to mention I'm in Port Sydney, Ontario, Canada, so I'm a little north of Steph and Gary. And I am so appreciative that actually Dr. Bruce Perry was a presenter. So for quite a few times in the early 2000s up to maybe 2010. And so we were utilizing a lot of the research from the ACEs. And so in my capacity, what we did was we provided training for the educators so that they were more skillful at providing practices within the classroom so that they would become more down regulating for the children without actually addressing, what they were doing. And then in my capacity, so I worked with families and educators with children who had children between birth and age 6. And so then I did a lot of, community awareness about our own behaviors and actions and how that's contributing to the development of the child in their lifetime. So it was just so wonderful to have that information available. And it's exciting to see how it's being continued to be made available.
Yeah, it's very transformative, right? Now, working with Dr. Perry, what was that connection like? I'm curious.
Well, I wasn't actually working with him, but it was just that, and fortunately, there was both provincial and federal funding that brought Dr. Perry here so many occasions. And because at that time it was sort of like everything was busting open about the influence of or the importance of brain development. So, he was there, Dr. Dan Siegel, and from Canada we had Dr. Stuart Shanker, Dr. Jean Clinton, And Gary, for your inquiry, if you went to the infant mental health promotion, they are located at Sick Kids, but they're not part of Sick Kids. That's Dr. Chaya Kulkarni. So, yeah, it really was an amazing collaborative team that brought a lot of the research and really influenced the programming that we were offering to families and educators. And even informing the doctors, because that's what really influenced the 18-month well baby check that it happens for infants here in Canada. So it's great stuff.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. I'll tell you what's got me excited is PCEs, right? The positive childhood events, because we know that they're just as impactful as the negative. And I've gotten some of that, facilitated some of that, bringing in content expertise to speak to our teams here. And I want to do more of that in the year to come. Focus more. We know all the bad stuff now, right? But let's focus in on what can we do, the good stuff that has the best impact to help bring us out of this or help the next generation. I know it's a human contact thing. I know it's connecting with folks who care. I know some of the core things, but I'd really like to spend some more time focusing in on that as the next year or two of work. Yeah, for me personally.
I would agree with that, Brent, in that we know that there are certain windows that close, and when those windows close, there's no recourse. That's the way it's going to be. But we also know that when the window isn't closed, then we can bring in those positive restorative. And if the window is closed,
can we get somebody to open up the storage room door for us so we can put the guitars away?
Sure. We can still do adaptive and coping skills once we know the windows have closed. Those developmental windows, when they close, we still have things we can do.
Yeah.
We can't, it's not as effective, but it is still a possibility.
That's the piece that excites me. So it's wonderful to know trauma, get everything we can around it and teach it to everyone, the impact that it's having. But what are those things that help us with recovery, resilience, hope, and healing? Those are things that I think I personally want to do more and spend this time in the next few years in that space, because there's still so much and so many folks who are really tapping into this piece and getting our understanding around this. I want to begin to work on that other part of it. Like, what are those things that we can teach our communities, teach our parents, and teach our organizations how we can do things? How can we reimagine how we're working, how we're living and thriving together? That's the piece I think that will add to where we are right now.
So we got 2 minutes left.
Yep.
So anybody got any further questions or observations for Brent, or just to share generally?
I was just going to add, Robert, this thing that we're doing, we tend to culturally just do this thing, though, right? It's like all day long we're just stressed, right? It's an okay thing. I don't want that to be okay anymore. I want us to realize that we can do this thing. We can self-regulate. We can do things and be more present with ourselves and with others. Be more mindful. I know you guys can relate to that from the work that you do, right? Just be more present with ourselves and being more mindful. Yeah.
Have you done work with educators, Brent?
Yeah. So the Center for Mind Body Medicine, in their PTPs, their professional training programs, those are, you get all eight sessions in a shorter window in 4 days. Instead of doing 2 hours once a week, you do 8 in like 4 days, where you truly get to practice this and do it in small groups. And many of them are educators that are in there. I just had one in my small group that had a group that was folks from around the world, and one of them was an educator. So yeah, many educators are embracing this and becoming certified and becoming faculty as well to help teach it to other educators.
It's been a blessing to have you join us, Brent, and certainly given us a lot of food for thought. And I've been scribbling down names of books and resources as well. And certainly I can share with the people on the call here any information you come up with in kind of response to some of the questions that were raised.
I thank you for having me, and I look forward to staying connected. I think you guys have a way to connect with me through my website, right? I think that was made available. I would love to stay connected and continue to kind of focus in on how we can make the world more mindful and how we can reimagine things together. Because I really personally I don't like where I see where the world is right now, and I think that we can create a space where we are more whole and more well. And yeah, there's some transformation that needs to take place, and I would love to do some of it with you.
Thank you, Brent. It is breatheright.org, and I did put that link into the chat. So good work, and best wishes with your work. And until we meet again, everybody, be well. Thanks for the practice. Thanks for your presence.